Abraham Accords very soon.
The accords expand the number of Arab nations with diplomatic ties with Israel. 4 Republicans joining House Democrats in passing a resolution to stop the U.S. conflict with Iran. Progressive Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
This is a message that of both the depravity and wrong-headedness of going into Iran.
Now, the vote largely symbolic, but sends a warning to President Trump about support for the war. America is listening to Fox News.
When a child is struggling with their mental health, the adults around them can make all the difference. Parents, teachers, coaches, anyone who shows up in a child's life. Because in those tough moments, kids are looking to the grown-ups around them for support.
If you're at school having a bad day, you just don't want to do anything.
I just get these thoughts like, do better. All my little emotions in my head is just running crazy. I don't know what to do.
As a teacher or coach, do you ever feel overwhelmed?
He's just in tears in the huddle. I was like, what's wrong? And he's just like, I'm just so frustrated. And I didn't know what to do.
None of my undergraduate studies talked about mental health.
Teachers need tons of help.
That's why the Kids Mental Health Foundation provides free expert-developed tools and resources to help adults support the kids they care about.
Having those resources is the same as the CPR class to me. We're trying to save a life here.
Because when adults feel supported, kids do too. Kids Mental Health starts with us. Find free resources at kidsmentalhealthfoundation.org.
14 years in prison for killing a young woman. A 15-year sentence for a crash that caused 3 deaths. 12 and a half years for killing a child and critically injuring her mother. All true stories, all caused by marijuana-impaired drivers. No matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So, if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
America 250 is a great time to reflect on our country's past, present, and insane savings. Go to InsaneRadioDeals.com now to catch our America 250 sale, where everything is 25.0% off. Yes, you heard me right. Everything 25.0% off. Doesn't matter who you are, there will be 25 days of savings available to you. The InsaneRadioDeals.com America 250 sale. 25.0% off of our entire inventory. Now until August 1st, you will not want to miss it.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app. 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, and asking your smart speaker, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane and JJ Hendrickson.
Props! Not props to anybody here in the Fast Lane. Props to JJ Hendrickson, because he's the one who has to get us on the video stream at Fast Lane, Ed Lane, and VTRN Sports, Facebook Live, and YouTube. Props! I am knocking dirt onto myself, and that little clicking noise you're hearing if you're just consuming us 93.3 FM Lynchburg, the VTRN Sports app, or asking your smart speaker, open VTRN Sports. This clicking noise is because I finally came up with an idea for props. Jim Phillips, ACC commissioner, caught between a rock and a hard place. Yes, banging 2 rocks together. They are actual rocks. If you want video proof, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, and VTRN Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube. I did not go out into the parking lot at the Virginia Talk Radio Network studios and grab gravel instead. But the reason why we're bringing that up is, doesn't it kind of feel like Jim Phillips, ACC commissioner, is a bit caught between a rock and a hard place, JJ, in the sense of Miami clearly is engaged in recruiting pitches with players on other rosters, whether it's head coach Mario Cristobal or people he has authorized to be involved in his program.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a tough situation, Ed. And with the way college sports just continue to evolve, it feels a little unprecedented almost. Like, if I was him, I'd have no idea what to do in this situation. Really, really tough. Like you said, stuck between a rock and a hard place.
So the reason on elaborating on it is this. At the ACC kickoff last week down in Charlotte, and we have a lot of great coverage, some still to come, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, wherever you listen to podcasts. But at the ACC kickoff, Jim Phillips really did not go into detail on tampering, in particular, tampering within his conference. The thing is, You don't want it to be happening, especially within your conference. But if you're not engaged in some kind of, let's be honest, evaluations of talent and monetary worth of players that are on other rosters, you're pretty far behind, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thing is, it really came to the surface in late January. Actually, this has been happening for a while, but this year's version with Miami came in late January, where at what's called the 11th hour, with about 6 hours to go in the transfer portal window, all of a sudden, news starts leaking out of Durham, North Carolina, that Darian Mensah might be entering the transfer portal, with Miami possibly being a destination for him. And what do you know? He enters a transfer portal with one of those, it's a tough decision, quote unquote, announcements, and does in fact commit to the Miami Hurricanes. And I am being snarky about it's a tough decision. So tough that I made it and am making more money on my next stop. Kind of like the tennis thing. Have you ever seen tennis? Are you a big tennis fan at all?
I am not.
Okay,
a tennis
no
guy.
problem. So I play and I watch. The one thing that grinds my gears is when someone hits the ball, it clips the top of the net, and it goes over to the other side, bounces in, and the person who hit the ball gets the point. And yet they put their hands up in apology. It's completely bogus. It's ridiculous. It's kind of similar, though, in this situation. The fake apology here. Darian Mensah. No, it was a tough decision. No, it's not, man. You're probably getting about $2 million a year more to go to Miami. They said $10 million, but that's a total investment. $4 million apparently to help pay for him to leave Duke, another $6 million in compensation. Now, Mensah is still making out from this particular deal, but Miami also helping foot the bill, allegedly, on all of this. But where it comes to the surface in the ACC is Duke's not the only school where this happened. In fact, let's call a spade a spade. Duke may or may not have poached Darian Mensah from Group of 5 power Tulane. And so Duke is in that spot. Like one of my analogies that you've never heard here, JJ, but I've used it previously in the fast lane. You can't go with somebody who just cheated on their spouse to be with you and then be shocked when they also cheat on you with another person. Like, it don't work like that. Like, they're not going to all of a sudden just cheat on the person and be loyal to you forever. There's a good probability they're just watching out for their best interest, and the next shiny offer that comes around, they're going for that. Darian Mensah literally left Tulane for a shinier offer in Durham and then left Durham for a shinier offer in South Beach. So you can't be surprised by that. But, the ironic thing is Manny Diaz was not the most vocal critic of this. He kind of downplayed it to an extent and, at points in the offseason as admitted what's happened. Meanwhile, Pat Narduzzi, who retained quarterback Mason Heinschel, and actually their backup Eli Holstein transferred to Virginia, but Mason Heinschel stays at Pitt. And Pat Narduzzi had mentioned this to the Pittsburgh area media, but he has no problem just doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down as he did at the ACC kickoff.
To have it for one 10-day window or 15-day window. But I think it also, if we can go down to 10 days, it eliminates the tampering by 5 days. Okay. And, whether it's your quarterback in the last 5 days getting tampered with or whatever it may be, I think it's bad stuff. And I think it needs to be eliminated. But why eliminate? We're not going to get rid of tampering tomorrow, but the fewer days, the less tampering there will be.
See, this is where I disagree with Pat Narduzzi. You can reduce the window, but the last second deals are just going to happen sooner. It's moving deck chairs around on the Titanic. Like, programs that are in a desperate spot, but have the resources to resolve an issue, are going to act on the understanding of desperate times call for desperate measures. But Narduzzi, no problem calling out somebody, and apparently he even warned Manny Diaz that this might happen after he spoke with the media. He spoke with Matt Schick and Jeff Schwartz on their show and basically went into greater detail on how this whole tampering thing went down.
Mason came in the office and was like, Coach, something come up. I was like, you're staying here. I just said, listen, you ain't going anywhere. You're a Pitt man. You're not going anywhere. Just give me a couple of hours. We'll get this thing straightened out. And by noon that day on a Thursday, a day before the portal closed, Mason was, on Twitter saying I'm committed to stay at Pitt. So we got it done. We didn't match that crazy offer, but we got pretty darn close. And, again, I give our athletic department, our chancellor, Joan Gable, and Alan Green credit for finding a way to keep Mason here because we couldn't lose him. Your quarterback is so critical.
So what Pat Narduzzi is kind of saying is that money is still a factor and we still need monetary support. And while he's, I think bitter to the crazy offer, JJ, I think even he in the comments to an extent acknowledged that, this is a monetary decision. And I think as much as anything, it's probably driven out of frustration that Pitt lost their top running back to Texas. And NC State did the same thing, by the way. Lost their top linebacker, Rasheem Biles, to Texas. NC State lost their top running back as well, Hollywood Smothers, to the Longhorns. But it's the reality that Miami's got a lot more financial resources and therefore can even try to pull this type of thing off.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, Ed, put yourself in the position of a college quarterback. What percentage of college players go to the NFL? It's something like 1% or something super low like that. So you're thinking about your college quarterback. You want to set yourself up financially for the long term. If I'm in his shoes, I would take the biggest offer too. So I completely understand where he's coming from. And I feel like the head coaches really can't be mad. This is just part of the NIL era we're in. Guys are going to go to the school that gives them the biggest offer a lot of the time. Yeah,
and honestly, if you're a school and you're not looking for the best option, you're going to get left behind. And so I think Pat Narduzzi, when he spoke with Matt Schick and Jeff Schwartz after his ACC teleconference or ACC press conference at the kickoff last week, he warned Manny Diaz, but I think everyone could have probably seen this was coming anyway. And Miami probably just has a big board of potential targets. And if one doesn't say yes, you just keep moving down, kind of like the draft board.
That's a 15-day portal window. So on the 14th day, that happens. Okay. The very next day, matter of fact, I'm in communication with Manny Diaz that afternoon saying, you better watch out because they're coming for yours too. And bang, lo and behold, it happened.
It did. It happened. But here's the thing. If I'm the ACC commissioner and I'm Jim Phillips, you need Miami and their relevance more than you need schools like Duke and Pitt, which are struggling to keep up with a financial investment in football. I think, if anything, this speaks to the line of the haves and the have-nots. And let's be real, it's in other conferences. The Oregons, the Ohio States, and the Michigans and Penn States are operating on a different budget from the Purdues, the Northwesterns, the Minnesotas of the Big Ten. It's happening in the SEC. The LSUs, the Georgias, the Tennessees, the Alabamas. They're on a different budget from the Mississippi States of the world in that conference. Let's call a spade a spade. And the ACC is probably the most glaring example because it's a boutique conference. Like, you've got certain schools that just flat out cannot keep up financially with others. Now, Cal's trying, to their ever-loving credit. Who knows how much money is actually untapped at Stanford because of all the .com business that's out there. I actually think, and they're a private school, but I actually think if they really cared, they could put money in. But then there are others. Wake Forest clearly struggling to retain a basketball roster. Virginia Tech in our own backyard. They are absolutely putting their priority into football. Basketball roster, the budget seems to largely be the same this year as last year, which means you're regressing in talent because other schools are investing more. And again, Virginia Tech, I would say in football, they're clearly a big spender. Miami, a big spender in that and in other sports. But the big spenders in the ACC, there's a gulf between the schools that are bigger in size, have the resources, and or are just flat out committed to performing at a high level. And then the others who just flat out don't care to, it seems, Boston College's, Wake Forest, and or don't have the financial positioning. And that's the reality. If you're the ACC, your ability to remain a solvent conference, I think more depends on your ability to have the higher end schools perform at a higher level and maybe help bankroll the smaller schools for as long as possible, at least, than trying to cater to the smaller schools and allowing them to be the crabs in the bucket, if you will.
Yeah, that's a great take, Ed. I mean, at the end of the day, what you want from your conference is you want to still be playing late into January. And let's be real, Miami is probably the ACC's best chance to do that. We don't have the likes of Clemson, who used to be a national superpower. They're just lacking a little bit. So Miami has the resources. They're going to bring in the best players possible. And that's going to keep your conference relevant, which is exactly what Jim Phillips would want, I'm sure.
And if you're Mario Cristobal at Miami, I mean, his comment basically is a comment without commenting, if you will, on whether they even tampered with Darian Mensah, which I think, I mean, heck, let's just go ahead and do it. The what he said and what he meant.
the best place to find true insight is in a press conference.
He cares about the players. We've got a true veteran that's been in this game a long time. He really wanted this opportunity.
It's not a media scrum.
They found a way to persevere through it. They didn't get down. They didn't start pointing fingers. They all looked at themselves in the mirror and said, hey, we're going to figure out what it takes. The least important thing in a game is the score at halftime, right?
It's listening to the Fast Lane dissect what's really being said by your favorite players, coaches, and administrators.
In the 40-minute game, no one cares. You got to be able to execute on both ends of the floor. Man, they play hard for 40 minutes.
It's time for what he or she said and what he or she meant.
Richie McKay, though, they play hard for 40 minutes is my favorite. You know, it's the compliment to the Mid-Atlantic Christians and the other schools that are out there. And he has said multiple times in the past, like, there are actually some other reasons they scheduled him. But after that little detour, Mario Cristobal, what he said about Darian Mensah and bringing him in, and then what he meant.
Well, we were in the market for a quarterback. We felt that the team was really set in so many areas. And when Darian hit the portal, we felt, you know what, this is a guy we would love to pursue. Watching crossover tape with so many opponents that we had faced, we saw his level of talent, level of play.
What he basically means is we were set everywhere else, and we had one key area that we needed to address. And when he hit the portal, code for we may not have reached out to him directly, but there are always agents you can reach out to and drop little feelers out there. Not to mention everyone knows Miami spends money. That sure seems like what he said and what he meant, JJ.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the transfer portal was still open, and I'm sure Miami reached out, even though he wasn't in it at the time. And, I mean, what would you expect to end up happening in this situation? You're a Duke quarterback, transferred from a smaller school already. Like you said, why are you going to trust the person who cheated on you before to stay loyal now? He's going to get that offer, and he's going to Miami straight away.
How often have the Miami Hurricanes basketball program lost a player because Duke basketball wanted him more and financially prioritized him more in this modern era? Like Vernon Carey's one example, whose dad is a legacy football player at Miami. And I'm not saying any of this is bad. I'm just saying it cuts both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to understand, guys are going to want to go to the biggest schools possible where they're going to get the most money. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. Miami, you're going to be playing on a national stage. And if he does want to end up playing at the next level, he's going to have a much better position, going to put himself in a much better position to do that, being the quarterback of Miami than he would being the quarterback of the Blue Devils. So it sucks for Duke, but you gotta fully understand where Miami's coming from and where this young kid's coming from. He's going to want to put himself in the best position he possibly can.
I mean, if Duke wants to get the financial resources into football like they have in basketball, because Miami's spending in hoops too, Virginia's spending in both. You know, other programs have found ways to pull this off. Texas Tech's obviously the most glaring example in college sports, but they are not the only one. And because of all that, look, if you're Miami, you came back down from the idea that if you can upgrade your roster in the portal and you're always mining for candidates. Does it sound kind of skeezy? Yes. Does Miami as an area have a history of skeezy behavior? Yes, it does. Insert your jokes about former leaders and people in charge over in a university in Lynchburg. Not the University of Lynchburg, a university in Lynchburg. But Mario Cristobal, I don't think you should back down about using the portal.
We found ourselves also in a situation like in previous years where it was a time to take a portal quarterback. We feel going forward that now we are set in that room from a high school standpoint, you know, with what we have on the roster and what we have coming in. And I'll also say this, that every single year is different. Even though our foundation is the high school player, we're never going to deny ourselves the opportunity to get better as a program if there is a player that we can pick up in the portal that can help our program elevate.
And that's Mario Cristobal basically saying, look, we can't afford to miss an opportunity to gain an increase in talent. Do you think Texas just magically stumbled upon Rasheem Biles, the linebacker from Pitt, or Hollywood Smothers, the running back from NC State, among their other selective portal additions? Or do you think they were doing their work beforehand? And it kind of goes back to a couple things. You can move the transfer portal window up or shorten the amount of time it's there, but there's always going to be 11th hour situations. You're always going to have schools that if they're in that spot and they're a big enough spender, they're going to look for ways to convince somebody to enter the portal to make this happen. Like it happens at Miami, but don't forget that LSU reportedly tried to get Damon Williams to leave Washington, not at the 11th hour, but still tried to pull it off. And ultimately Washington, Williams, who apparently agreed to return to Washington, tried to transfer, but then backed out of his efforts to transfer reportedly to LSU, ultimately wound back up at Washington. So this stuff is happening, and it may not even be with the players themselves. it's either their, air quotes coming, agents, or it's their parents who are involved in this decision-making process. Meanwhile, speaking of those types of decisions, some decisions have been made, including in entertainment, which is where we begin the Fast Five at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kinda ish. Let's start with number 5.
Novak Djokovic, The Wolf in Winter, is a new series about Djokovic, which apparently is produced in part by Djokovic, that will begin streaming on Amazon Prime August 20th. I say this with cautious optimism. I'm excited to see this, but I'm not over the top about it. First of all, when any entertainer has say in a production, whether it's written or video or podcast form about them, I'll consume it, but with a different degree of viewing it compared to like Rafael Nadal has his own documentary out. And it's insightful and it's revealing and there's some vulnerabilities. But I'm even more intrigued when someone like Christopher Clarey, the great tennis writer, does an unauthorized biography from the Washington Post, but does an unauthorized biography. And others have been done on Federer and Serena Williams as well, where it's not done in conjunction with the athlete. The performance and the synopsis of a career, not in conjunction with the athlete, is more interesting to me because while it may not make them seem more favorable on a public level, it certainly is more exciting for me because it's going to be more genuine and authentic and revealing. And I think that, to me, JJ, goes across all sports.
So you don't prefer to have the point of view from the athlete themselves. You would rather have kind of an objective viewpoint from an outside view, the real point of view.
I mean, in a perfect world, it's an objective viewpoint from an outside viewer, but you get commentary from the athlete or coach or whomever it is. But I don't mind it. I'll consume it, but I take it with a bigger grain of salt if it's the athlete helping to produce the documentary or produce the project, because how many of them are either going to over sensationalize bad things that happen because it makes it more exciting for views, clicks, whatever it is, or under sensationalize to protect their image, but it's not all that genuine.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense, Ed. I mean, when you're looking at it from an outside point of view, I feel like that is the least amount of bias you could possibly get. And like you said, if an athlete's producing it themselves, they're going to want to make themselves look as good as possible and also make the bad seem as worse as they possibly can.
Speaking of tennis, here we go.
Number 4.
Bounces by Ben Roethlisberger is the first to bring this story up. I know it's wading into politics, but following cultural momentum from anti-trans pushes in sports, the WTA has enacted a new policy that will require all players to undergo genetic testing in order to continue playing on the WTA tour. First of all, let's call a spade a spade. You don't really need to determine whether they're a natural man or not to be on the men's tour. Like, there's a different level of speed and just raw power. Look at the serve speed, for example, of men's players versus women. And this isn't to demean the women's game. I love the women's tennis game. I think it's, there's more drama than just the championship match where it's Sinner, Alcaraz, or one of the two against somebody else. But when it comes to women's sports, I have long thought that, again, I come from this differently. In running, you don't have to worry about this. Everybody's just running the race, and wherever you finish is wherever you finish. But I think women's sports suffers more from that. If guys are, if they're born men and then transition over to being female, however you feel about that, that's different. I think women's sports suffers more than that because you have some ways to build your skills up by being a man, and then you transition to being a woman, and it can put you in an advantage. Versus vice versa, it's going to be a lot harder to make that transition. But it's one of those that's the reality in sports. I don't really like that it's there, but I understand why it's there. And frankly, I am more on the side of being reasonable testing on this. I'm pretty liberal when it comes to, like, if you want to be gay or if you're gay or a lesbian, I'm not saying I agree with it, but it's a free country. You do have that choice. I have a little tougher time with, like, the transgender thing just because God either made you a male or a female. That's my personal views. I understand you're getting into a real sticky subject here in the fast lane, but it's breeding into sports because of this story about the WTA tour with their anti-transgender push in sports. I get why it's there for women's and it's not going to be there for men. And I think that's probably the most simple way to describe it. And just there's some genetic realities of why the ATP tour, the men's version, is not going to have this policy, whereas the WTA tour does need to have something in place.
Yeah, I'm the same way, Ed. I mean, everyone's entitled to do whatever they want, but you got to look at it from the woman's point of view when it comes to sports. I mean, imagine working so hard for your life And then you have someone who used to be a man comes in and dominate the sport you've been working so long for. So I get where the WTA is coming from here. It's a sticky situation, like you said, but it's one that had to be.
It does, and it is. And ultimately, I think when you're talking trans, men's sports don't lose nearly the way that women's do in terms of just the amount of effort that's put in. And I think there's some objective commentary that you can put on that. No easy way to transition from that to this.
Number 3.
NASCAR is expected to double practice time to allotted teams. This, according to The Athletic, the story is something that has been developing over the last week. And we'll ask Dalton Hopkins of FrontStretch.com about this momentarily. I like this. I like more practice time for teams. Honestly, I'd rather it be 2 30-minute windows and you can have time to make adjustments. Some teams don't like it, but I think we're already seeing the cream rise in NASCAR, which is why this does not bother me to have more practice time. If anything, I think it can help the racing be better. And at different tracks and venues, I think that's good, which, I am all for teams being able to make adjustments and getting more clarity on who is the best team and driver. I think we're in a good spot now, but I do think there are ways to make it better. Back to, by the way, speaking of NASCAR, but back to entertainment in.
Number 2.
Prime Video has said they would like to broadcast more NASCAR races, but as SBJ's Adam Stern notes, that's unlikely because the current media rights deal runs through 2031. I think there are a couple of things that are worth bringing this up. First of all, it's always good to have multiple bidders involved and multiple parties that are interested. Second of all, I love what Prime and TNT have done with their coverage the last, what will be 10 weeks when it wraps up at the Brickyard this coming Sunday. I think it's been great. There's innovativeness. The fact that they can go a little bit longer on post-race shows to recap, I think is a good thing for the viewer and the coverage that they bring, rather than feeling like they just interview the winner and then curtail it because they have to get to some other preempted program. But I'd also say this. The fact that streamers are interested in NASCAR, I think speaks to the health of the sport. That is a positive. And also the fact that NASCAR, I give them credit. I think they're a consistent product. That you know what you can get and what you're going to get out of viewership. That's not worth underestimating between that and streamer interest in an era where the NFL is about to suck more financial resources out of other routes. Meanwhile,
Number 1.
Alas, we had Tom Brady getting into an altercation multiple times at FanFest in New York and then at the World Cup, from slapping Jake Paul, this social media influencer boxer, and then giving him the middle finger on different occasions. And then LeBron James and the reported leak that he was going to go to Miami, only to have Miami say, nope, we were just preparing in case this happens. I got a different take on this. Is there not kind of just a need for these stars to stay in the spotlight as you're at the end of your career in LeBron or you're already past your career in Tom Brady? No one's disputing the fact that LeBron is one of the 5 best basketball players of all time. To me, he's number 2 to Michael Jordan, but that's a debate for a different day. Tom Brady, to me, is the greatest quarterback of all time. But it's kind of like when you realize the end is near. I go back to the Marty Smith article. I think it's one of the best ever that's been done, and that is athletes die twice. Because they die once like normal human beings, but they die before that when their career ends and their perception completely changes. And I kind of wonder if that's what we are seeing with both Brady and LeBron, staring that reality in the face, and therefore things are unfolding more, whether it's LeBron taking an eternity to pick his next NBA team or Tom Brady with these altercations, doing things that in their peaks, it doesn't seem like they would do as real mature professional athletes, but now they're in a different spot and they are doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never heard that saying, an athlete dies twice, but it makes total sense. You think about it, they're working their whole life on this sport and being in the spotlight. It's got to be really hard to just stop all of a sudden once you hit middle 30s to your 40s. So definitely a tough situation, but it does feel like there's some attention craving going on here, especially from Tom Brady's point of view. At least LeBron's still in the league. Tom Brady feels like it's just grasping at straws to stay relevant.
Well, yeah, not only that, but I think Tom Brady's, if you're going to get a scale of being judgy, look, I'm a bigger Brady fan than I am LeBron in their relative sports, but I think Brady's are much more childish than LeBron, which is more just, it's how he operates as a brand, quote unquote. When we return in the fast lane, back to those NASCAR topics with Dalton Hopkins of FrontStretch.com, slated to step into the fast lane when we return on the VTRN Sports app and ask that smart speaker, open VTRN Sports.
Life moves fast. Your checking account should too. At Farmers Bank, our personal checking accounts make managing your everyday spending simple with convenient debit card access, online banking, and no hassle. Whether you're paying bills or grabbing coffee, we've got you covered. Open your account today at the Farmers Bank location, including our Timberlake Road branch, and experience checking that works as hard as you do.
Big transitions feel like big hurdles. That's why Central Virginia Counseling has 2 dynamic 6-week summer groups for rising 6th and 9th graders packed with essential life skills. Each week targets a new skill for success, tools like organization, time management, task initiation, anxiety reduction techniques, and skills for making friends and communicating well. Through peer connection and expert guidance, students will gain tools to feel capable, connected, and ready for day one. Visit us on Timberlake Road or Wigington Road in Lynchburg or at centralvirginiacounseling.com to learn more.
Hill City, the Howlers are home all week long. Friday, get out early for the Southpaw Championship bobblehead presented by Pepsi for a 6:30 first pitch. It's First Responders Night on Saturday, presented by Maddox Air and Electrical at 6:30 p.m. with fireworks following the game. And Sunday, get the kids out for the Howlers Jersey Lunchbox giveaway before a 2 p.m. start. Get tickets at hchowlers.com and howl out loud.
Hi, I'm Zach Mackey, the voice of Virginia Tech men's basketball. Catch the Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle weekdays 5 to 6 p.m. on VTRN Sports 93.3 FM and the VTRN Sports app.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at JJ Hendrickson 27 and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
The Dormitory. I love that song, by the way. That's why we bring it up here. In the Fast Lane, just a friend. I like Nobody Beats the Biz, personally, from Biz Marquee, but have to interject that as we welcome you back in and welcome in Dalton Hopkins on frontstretch.com. Pit Lane CPT. He is just a friend and a reporter for frontstretch.com, and he's engaged, by the way. We have to be upfront and honest about that. Dalton, looks like you, if for those that are watching at VTRN Sports and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook Live and YouTube, you are rocking the bod down in Florida. Must be hot and humid down there, huh?
It's hot. I just got done with the workout. I go to an outdoor gym, and it is super hot out there, Ed. It's super hot out there right now. So, but the more you sweat, the more it works. The more work you put into it. So I like it. I like it a lot.
Got to be looking good for when you're up there chilling out, watching some NASCAR this weekend at Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Indy Race Park. More on that in a moment. But we're coming off the weekend at North Wilkesboro. First of all, the quality of racing. Should we be critical of the racing product at North Wilkesboro, or do we need to kind of view this through the Michael Massey Richmond lens, where Massey, your colleague, has always touched on, whether it's in frontstretch.com articles, the Front Stretch Happy Hour podcast, or appearances in the Fast Lane. Massey has always mentioned that Richmond should be viewed more as the quality of racing is good when you look at it from, hey, this is a real small intermediate track as opposed to traditional beating and banging short track. I looked at North Wilkesboro that way. I'm like, wow, there's some really good racing in stage 1 for the lead. That kind of went away, but it was good in other parts, even throughout the field afterwards. Am I off base, or do we need to reframe how we judge the product in terms of quality of racing at North Wilkesboro?
Yeah, I think even if you look at it in that intermediate lens, kind of like Richmond, I think you'll find that it's still it's I would say maybe even better than the current short tracks nowadays, like your typical short tracks like Bristol or St. Martinsville, because you had multi-lane racing. You still had a lot of passing going on. As a matter of fact, according to Phil Alloway's article, his Couch Potato Tuesday article on frontstretch.com this past Tuesday, he saw according to the data, there was more passing per lap at North Wilkesboro than you saw at Bristol and then you saw at Martinsville. There actually significantly more passing. So the more lanes you have, the more passing you get. I think people look at North Wilkesboro as kind of dull just because there wasn't a lot of cautions. There was only like 6 cars that finished in the lead lap, and Joey Logano led, 80% of the race. Yes, that makes it a little bit duller, but at the same time, you have to look at the short track package as a whole. And I think you'll find that North Wilkesboro actually still kind of put on a decent show. And because it wasn't absolutely incredible, I don't think you should discount that track just because of that. We just got it back. Give it a few more years, and let's see what NASCAR can do with this racing product, and maybe they can improve the short track package just a little bit more.
Dalton Hopkins of frontstretch.com with us here in the Fast Lane. He is at Pit Lane CPT on Twitter. And oh, no, it's Dalton. Still the best Instagram handle that's out there. I think it's too long for Twitter, though. We're at Fast Lane Ed Lane on all of ours. Dalton, you referenced North Wilkesboro. Give it a few more years. That's been another subject of a lot of articles at frontstretch.com. The role of North Wilkesboro in future NASCAR schedules. What should the role be of North Wilkesboro in future NASCAR schedules?
I think you got to keep it as a points race just for now. I mean, I know there's debate of whether or not it should continue being a points race. To be honest, I don't understand why there is a debate. The story of it returning to the schedule, to the regular schedule alone, is one hell of a story. It's not something that we could have possibly imagined 5 years ago, but here we are. And why would you want to get rid of that? And I think when you look at the track, I think if you're going to keep it on the schedule, as we mentioned on the Happy Hour podcast the 2 days ago, I think if you're going to keep it on the schedule, some things do need to be updated. There are some track amenities that need to be placed on there. There's a lot of complaints that there's no jumbotron, like there's no replay camera for those at the track. There's no scoring pylon, or at least there's not a big one. There is one, but it's only about like 7 cars from what I've heard. So some things do need to be updated. Some track amenities need to be updated. Now, you should still keep some of the charm, like the person flipping over the scoring cards, kind of like what you would see at like a local baseball game or something. You see them flipping the placards every time a car passes another car. Like, keep that, because that's fun. The Winston Cup Series sign when you enter the track, that's cool, that's great. But there's a difference between being a throwback and being outdated. And I think Wilkesboro is kind of navigating that fine line. So give it like 2 more years and then revisit it. But one race in the schedule, I think, is plenty, because there's certainly worse tracks out there that we currently go to that should really have a little bit more of a magnifying glass on it than North Wilkesboro.
I am pumping my fists in the fast lane for those watching at VTR in Sports and Fast Lane Ed Lane, because Dalton Hopkins just answered all the follow-up questions we had about North Wilkesboro. Add a race, take one away. He's on the keep it at 1 track, and he just outlined the reason very brilliantly. Other frontstretch.com people have different opinions, so check out frontstretch.com for thoughts on that. We will pivot off of North Wilkesboro to this coming weekend at the Brickyard. Do you see a driver like SVG bursting through? Do you see a driver like Joey Logano building off the momentum? Or are the sportsbook justified in having the 11 car of Denny Hamlin as clearly the driver to beat this weekend in Indy?
I think Denny Hamlin's the driver to be at every track we go to nowadays. This is by far one of his best seasons I think I've seen in some time. I mean, on par with last year. So, but I'll put a pin in that for now. When it comes to Logano, I'm going to pump the brakes on all this hype around Logano. Yes, he put on a great performance at North Wilkesboro, but keep in mind, that's a track that is still kind of relatively new to a lot of these teams. And because before it was just an all-star race, and I'm sorry, but if I'm a race team, I'm not going to put a ton of research into the all-star race. And I kind of think that most of them don't really do that in the first place. Logano's team clearly put in a lot more work into that track, and that's great. They paid off, got him a win. But now it's time to move on to a track that's vastly different than North Wilkesboro. And I'm sorry to say, I don't see Logano putting on the same kind of performance. He is especially not going to be a championship contender this year. I'm sorry. Like, I like Logano. I respect that team. I think he's one of the best drivers in the field in recent history in NASCAR. And he is undoubtedly a future Hall of Famer. But he's just not having the season that I think a lot of people would have expected. It was a great performance in North Wilkesboro, but I don't see that continuing very much any further. Maybe New Hampshire, just because it's kind of like North Wilkesboro, but I don't see a whole lot of it. When it comes to other like SVG, I like what I see, but the only time that he seems to perform really well is when he qualifies well. And if he doesn't qualify in like the top 10, he's usually sitting around 31st. So I need to see a little bit more improvement from him. But that said, I join everyone else in saying that I am way impressed by how much he has grown over the last year, especially at these oval tracks. 3rd place in North Wilkesboro in a truck race is fantastic. 5th place in a cup race, especially with how long that race was, very impressive. And he took the lead from Logano at one point. Let's not forget that. And he led quite a few laps. So this is a guy that is getting kind of scary, I think. And if he improves any more, he's going to be contending for wins. And I wouldn't even be surprised if we see him maybe contending for a win before the end of the year on an oval.
To get my usher on for just a moment here in the fast lane, I do not believe the two-headed monster article this week at frontstretch.com is about the juggling act of scheduling in Indianapolis. Do you like the current setup Arca Menards and Trucks at Indy Race Park, which is one of my favorite short track venues, and then the O'Reilly and the Cup at the Brickyard? Or should everything but the Cup be at IRP and leave the Brickyard a crown jewel for the more prestigious NASCAR Cup Series circuit?
Man, this is a very tough debate because first off, let me say the way we have it now, I think is correct. I think that is a really good way of putting it, just because the Truck Series should have kind of its own identity. And I like these standalone tracks that the Truck Series has, like Lime Rock, like St. Pete, like IRP. I like those a lot, and I think that builds that Truck Series identity. It separates it away from O'Reilly and Cup. And I always liked O'Reilly going to IRP as well. However, I think the current car they have right now does so well at the Brickyard. I think you have to keep it there, not for the sake of it being a crown jewel track, but for the sake of just the racing quality. It's almost a plate race at this point. The leader can't get too far away, and we've seen two really great finishes the last couple, really three great finishes the last few years at Indy when it comes to these guys, when it comes to the O'Reilly series. So I think you got to keep it there just because of that. I almost wish we could have both. Like, I almost wish we could have like an O'Reilly race on Friday night at IRP and then another one on Saturday. But, I think if you're going to have one, I think you got to keep it at the Brickyard. And of course, you got to have Cup at the Brickyard too. No road courses. I'm sorry. We just don't have the car for it right now. But I kind of like the way we got it at the moment.
Dalton Hopkins, frontstretch.com. He's part of the Happy Hour podcast that drops on Tuesdays. To me, it's Wednesday morning. I mean, just subscribe. That way you can get it whenever it drops. You don't have to worry about when it drops. It'll just be a refresher in your feed. But he's with us here in the Fast Lane. He's at Pit Lane CPT in addition to frontstretch.com. NASCAR's doubling the practice window. Do you like this version of doubling it, or should they have two separate practice windows even if they're shorter?
I think it's the happy medium that you're going to get. I know a lot of people wanted kind of like what we used to have when it came to the practice sessions, having a happy hour, the happy hour practice session, not the podcast, and having that happy hour practice session, having a second practice session, and so on, final practice, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, NASCAR did this. We have to remember that NASCAR did this to save teams money. And some teams, I've talked to multiple teams, and they've all said, a lot of the team officials, and a lot of them have said, some of them have said, look, it doesn't really do anything for us. I've seen the other half say, actually, it saves us quite a bit of money, and it's usually the smaller teams. So these bigger teams that say it doesn't really do a whole lot for us, it's because I feel like it's just because they have more money. Whereas a lot of these smaller teams, these penny pinching teams, they're okay with it. They're okay with not having as much practice. So I think this is the happy medium you're going to get. I think 50 laps is good, but I don't know if you're going to see an overall improvement in racing quality. I don't know if it's going to change a whole lot when it comes to like the racing quality in terms of research these teams have. And the Group A, Group B thing, I could not care less about it. Like, I think if you're going to have a practice session, you need to have it. You need to practice how you race, and that includes having a session where the rest of the field has the chance to go out on the track, just like an actual race in race time. So it's a fine line. It's a really difficult, but I think it's a happy medium. It's the happiest medium that you're going to get. Honestly, I'm just happy we got any additional practice in the first place. I'm happy that we got something out of it.
I like you talking some reason into me. Personally, I'd be okay with 2 30-minute windows at separate times to really get an idea of this, but more is better than less. Doesn't mean we need like 4 practice windows, but a little bit extra is good, and hopefully it enhances the quality of the racing product. Dalton Hopkins of frontstretch.com is with us in the Fast Lane. Dalton, we wish that you'll be able to enjoy great racing this weekend up at Indy Race Park and at the Brickyard. And on top of that, we hope that that wonderful-looking body gets you the amount of attention that you so richly deserve.
The only attention I get is from my fiance, who I think just walked in the door. So that's the only attention that I want. Okay.
I don't see any thumbs down in the background. So
negative.
That's a good thing for you. Sometimes I it's like when I'm at the pool and take the shirt off and my wife's like, I don't know, it's like, okay, you're saying something without saying it.
Look, it only gets worse from down. It only gets worse south of here. Okay. It only gets worse. This is the best it's going to get.
We got basically a headshot like us in the Fast Lane. Yes. We're going to pretend that we look like we are The Rock the rest of our body, and you just don't need to know any different. Exactly. Dalton Hopkins, engaging with some interesting commentary today in the Fast Lane. Dalton, you brought it on yourself, but you also brought the great insight, so we are thankful.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Ed.
Our pleasure. Dalton Hopkins of FrontStretch.com with us in the Fast Lane. The hot seat when we return. Anthony Catalano, president of Hill City FC. How does he grade year one? What does he want to build on, and what does he want to correct from year one to year two? Those questions and more when we return here in the Fast Lane.
Midday hunger hitting you hard? Swing by Macadoo's for our $8.95 weekday lunch specials. Whether you're craving a classic crunch or something fresh, we've got you covered. Chicken tender basket featuring crispy golden tenders served with fries. The Macadoo's Chef Salad, a healthy, loaded favorite that will hit the spot. Hit back against your lunchtime hunger at Macadoo's with eats that won't break the bank.
It's time to share great food and fun. Just to be there, the only one. Just to be there at Macadoo's.
We'll see you at the Do's.
Tired of juggling 5 different numbers for your home's essential systems? Concord Mechanical is your true one-stop shop. From high-efficiency equipment sales and precision installation to proactive maintenance and emergency repairs, the Concord Mechanical will handle it all. Whether you're upgrading your HVAC, fixing a water heater, or seeking seasonal tuning, their expert technicians deliver seamless service under one roof. Save time, eliminate stress, and keep your home running perfectly year-round. Call today or visit theconcordmechanical.com to schedule your service.
End zone, light them up, touchdown Liberty.
The atmosphere at a game is amazing. It is like family.
I've been a season ticket holder for 14 seasons. The atmosphere is electric.
On the near sideline.
It's an experience. You look forward to every week. I like the pageantry, the band.
The pride of knowing that this is our university.
2026 Flames football season tickets are on sale now. Get yours at lufootball.com.
Come join the chat or give us a piece of your mind. JJ Hendrickson 27 and Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Ready or not, here we come. Hopefully it's not too bad for Anthony Catalano, president of Hill City FC, who is generous enough to join us now in the Fast Lane. But we're excited to chat with him, get a look back at year one, a look ahead to year two, and maybe even talk about some takeaways from the World Cup and the impact of soccer in the United States on Hill City FC. All of that right now is Hill City FC president Anthony Catalano is generous enough to join us here in the Fast Lane. Anthony, now that the World Cup is wrapped up a few days ago, Hill City FC season has wrapped up a week and change ago. Have you had a chance to exhale and look back on year one of soccer here in Lynchburg? And it looks like we're having a sound challenge getting Anthony's words coming in on the screen. We'll work through that right now. I need him to disconnect and then reconnect, and then we'll get that set up here in just a moment here in the Fast Lane. Excited to catch with him. If we have an issue one more time, we'll just go ahead and give him a call. Do you have his phone number, by the way, JJ? Okay, since you don't, this is where I get real creative. My phone is behind the book bag, so just prepare if it's not ready. Bring me the phone, and that way I can just hand it to you, and you can make a call. Nothing like live radio and live production of how to put this stuff together because, you know, preparation is often good, but sometimes it's not exactly the forte. But really, it's technical challenges that we're working through. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we've gotten that resolved from Anthony Catalano, president of Hill City FC. Anthony, first of all, can you hear us? All right, he can hear us, but we can't hear him. All right, scrap the video, get him on the phone if you don't mind. Here's the phone number, and we'll get ready to rock and roll because we don't want to miss any more time with Anthony Catalano of Hill City FC. We're excited to hear what year one brought year two, and I'm most curious about the momentum from the World Cup as well and how that has worked its way in. So we're going to get Anthony dropping the video stream. We're going to call him right now. JJ's giving Anthony a call on his cell phone, so we'll switch over right now. For me, year one of Hill City FC was just a success in the sense that year one of Hill City FC was a success in the fact that they had some peak attendance nights. There are probably some you'd like to have back, but ultimately the fact that you're moving the trial by error is one of the key advantages, and that's one of the hardest to maintain. So we are now pleased to be joined by Anthony Catalano, president of Hill City FC. Anthony, we appreciate your working through those technical challenges with us today. Here in the Fast Lane, we are glad to be catching up with you. Year one of Hill City FC. Have you had a chance, first of all, to just catch your breath from it?
Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties there, but first of all, thank you so much for having me on today. And yeah, man, what a way to just like come down from an amazing summer of soccer. Yeah, we're trying to catch our breath, and just not only from the inaugural season with Hill City FC and how unbelievable it was and overwhelmed with just the response of Lynchburg, but simultaneously with that, with the World Cup and what an exciting way to finish it off on Sunday. So yeah, really super excited for just an incredible summer of soccer. I'm probably along there with a lot of your listeners, feeling a little awkward. Like, what do you do with your day when there's not actually World Cup games playing and you got that on the background? But no, it was an incredible summer and a great way for us to see where the game goes from here.
That's where JJ and I, we were talking about that the other day, about how we're now at that point of like, what do we do during the middle of the day? Oh, we have to actually focus on work. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was just so awesome to be able to just see so many amazing stories come out of the World Cup and just, how each country embraced everybody that was coming from all over the world. And that's what's so beautiful about this game is just that there in itself is just how much that the world responds and it shows up and, all the great stories. And then, we use the beautiful game of soccer to be able to bring us all together. So just an exciting summer. And I think everybody's still kind of riding high on just what we witnessed over the last several weeks.
Anthony Catalano of Hill City FC, their president, is with us in the Fast Lane. Anthony, how did the 2026 World Cup in the United States impact the engagement with and around Hill City FC?
Yeah, I think it absolutely contributed to the engagement. I think the buzz leading up to the World Cup, I think our launch, in terms of announcement and bringing USL League 2 to Lynchburg, with all of the kind of build up to what the summer in 2026 was going to bring, I think certainly helped. And the hope is that obviously as we come out of this summer now, is that the excitement around the game, the impact on the game that it has on each community across this country is going to continue. And so I think it absolutely contributed to the engagement. I think people were super excited about it. We met so many incredible new fans of the game at Hill City. So I think all in all, the hope here is that you come out of this here in this country and soccer continues to rise and continues to impact and be a part of many communities across the country.
So I'm not of the belief that, all of a sudden every soccer match in America is going to be generating 15 to 40 million viewers like the World Cup matches did as the event went on. But I do see a path as a neutral observer to soccer generating more engagement and people being more invested in what's happening at all levels of soccer because of the World Cup. Where am I wrong? Where am I right?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of changes come out of the World Cup in terms of how the dynamic and the pyramid and how that starts to build out. And I think we're going to be able to see at the lower levels where actual soccer communities or actually communities across the country are starting to embrace soccer, and they're starting to look for those really great entertainment packages out of soccer clubs that bring a lot of value to their communities. And so I think that it's going to be this natural progression of, you don't have to be the most, intelligent person to watch the game, right? Like, you don't have to understand it intellectually and know all the rules. What you have to be able to provide is a really great product, not only in the field, but also just around it. What leads up to it, the game, the entertainment, the lead up to the game and what you're doing in stadiums. I think that is what people are looking for, is really great entertainment value packages for their families. And I think soccer is an exciting sport to be able to do that here in this country. And again, coming out of the World Cup, we're seeing a lot of that already start to happen. And I think that you're going to see more of it for years to come.
We're at Fast Lane Ed Lane on our socials and however you listen to podcasts, as well as live on the VTRN Sports app, weekdays 5 to 6 p.m., as well as 93.3 FM in Lynchburg. Hill City FC, check them out.com or on Twitter and Instagram as well to get with them. Anthony Catalano, Hill City FC president, generous enough to give us some time today here in the Fast Lane, looking back at year one and ahead to year two. So we'll blend them together. We'll get the bad out of the way first, or maybe not the bad, just the growth areas. When you look back on year one of Hill City FC, What are 3 areas where you and your team have identified as good, but ripe for improvement from year 1 to year 2?
Yeah, I think always, whenever we come out of our seasons, we look at kind of what is those, opportunities, right, to grow. We're always looking for, what could be improved on, what is something that worked really well. Maybe we can make it even better. I think operationally, we learned a lot from, our venue at the beautiful City Stadium in Lynchburg. There's certainly some things that I think we can improve on to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible. With our team that's on the ground from an operations perspective. We saw a lot of different things in terms of the elements that we grew over the season with what we provided with our beer garden experience and kind of our food trucks. I think that started to actually grow as we went on in the season. So there's a lot of opportunity there to, I think, actually add more elements into that. So I think from a pure operations perspective, we can always look at ways to make each and every one of our fans experience about more improved and better. And I think the feedback from what we got from all of our fans was overwhelmingly positive about their experience so far. So that's a good thing, but there's always ways that we can improve and make that better and make it a lot more fun and exciting for everyone that walks through those gates.
We'll flip it around as we're chatting with Anthony Catalano, and this is not meant to be a gotcha or anything. And I know you kind of touched on a couple of them already. What are some areas of success from year 1 of Hill City FC where you and your team are like, wow, we hit the mark on that. We can build upon that and make it even better in year 2? Where are you guys most proud of what you did, but also sensing a chance to really blow it out of the water next year?
Yeah, so I think one thing that's really, validates what part of the vision and the dream for bringing something like this to Lynchburg was, can we bring the community together around soccer? And that was absolutely yes. I think that is now how much further can we reach? How can we reach more people within Lynchburg and the greater surrounding areas? How can we bring more people into this and then let them enjoy it, right? And that's, I think, some of the challenges that we'll start to look at in terms of how can we expand and get bigger, right? And then some of the excitement around on the player side. I mean, we were super proud of some of the guys that came and we signed, in particular Seth Hammond, who came to us for 1 month and absolutely tore it up on the pitch. I think he scored 10 goals in 6 games or something like that. And within 1 month had already signed, onto the next division above us with MLS Next Pro team, Carolina Core. So that really validates that the technical side of what we put together in the coaching staff of Coach Lucas Paulini. It proved that guys want to play here and play for this club. And that's always a really positive thing when you're in a network of players that are all kind of looking at where they're going to sign, where they're going to go. And when we prove that to them, that if you come and play for Hill City FC, you have that chance to go up the ranks. That just, I think, is a really good validation, a very good feeling for the club in year 1 to do that.
We'll wrap it up with Anthony Catalano, Hill City FC president, who's with us in the fast lane on this topic. Rather than you and your staff's memories from year 1, what do you want the memories to be for the fans from year 1 that they cling to and use as something to get excited about Hill City FC when they think about, wow, can't wait for year 2?
Yeah, I think, just seeing, from the first inaugural game on May 16th, we had over 2,000 fans come to City Stadium. And we had a great start from the season in terms of some incredible wins, and we're off to the races, right? As a new club, an expansion in USL League 2, and we're top of the table. And then we had, we lost Seth, and that hurt us from a technical perspective. And so we started to dip a little bit. But what was so incredible is that on July 11th, our last regular season game, we were out of the playoff contention. We had close to 1,800 fans in the stands. And that just, to me, is that lasting memory of people want more and they're ready for more. And they came back out, on the last game. And I think that's the lasting memory for a lot of fans as they were leaving and exiting. Fortunate we got the win is that a lot of people were saying to us, we can't wait for season 2, can't wait for season 2. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to improve. There's a lot of growth for the club that we anticipate. going forward. And I think, stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of exciting announcements on ways to engage and get involved, here soon.
Excited for those moments to come as Anthony Catalano of Hill City FC has been generous enough to join us here in the Fast Lane. HillCityFC.com is the easiest way to learn more, although certainly checking them out on social media, Twitter and Instagram are also ways you can stay updated on the latest developments. Anthony, thank you for your time. Congratulations on getting through year one and the post-World Cup blues that many of us experience. Hopefully you can also experience a nice little exhale as you look to build on that heading to year two.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ed, for having me on, and look forward to some more on the show. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. Anthony Catalano with us here to wrap up the Fast Lane. If you missed that, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, where you listen to podcasts, we'll have some audiograms out, but we have a lot of those on JJ's plate, so you're better off just subscribing to the podcast if you missed it, and you can hear all of it, although we will have them coming soon at some point to Fast Lane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as well. In the meantime, that does it for us here on W227BG Timberlake, WVGMA Lynchburg, WMNA, Gretna, Danville, Southside, and the VTRN Sports app. Now, on to Freddie and Harry in progress. We're back tomorrow at 5.
Today, his preference is to